welcome to the new episode of the 10-Minute Product Podcast. Today we're going to talk about mistakes, that dirty laundry that everybody wants to know about, and war stories, whatever you call it. Jonas, what do you think about this?
Well, we all do mistakes, right? In particular, in product leadership roles, where you're kind of expected to take direction, take risks, lead on. You is kind of intrinsic to what we do that we take risks. But the point is how you deal with the mistakes you kind of do along the way.
Hmm.
And Christian, what do you looking kind of the concept of
Yeah,
mistakes? What do you think that is?
that's a really good one. So let's start with that actually. What is a mistake? I think from my point of view, there's several mistakes. I'm going to ignore the ones that are willful, where, you some people that happens, they do stuff on purpose. But let's look at the mistakes that you can do that are not your. So I have a few. One is mistakes by simply you don't know, and you realize after a few weeks, a few months, you realize that you're in the wrong direction. Then there's mistakes where you overlooked certain aspects. There's mistakes where you didn't want to deal with something and you had to battle against your own personality. These are the sort of big categories, I think, for me. Does that match with what your experience is?
It does, and obviously there's small mistakes with less impact on yourself and others, and then there's medium
Yeah.
and large mistakes, right? And so with an increasing scale of gravity, you could say. So obviously mistakes can be really bad, and it can be quite detrimental for people and the work you
Yeah.
do. How you handle mistakes when they occur.
Yeah.
And I think in that regard, a kind of a good formula is to obviously stop doing the mistake if it's kind of a repeating
Yeah.
pattern. Reflect on why it's a mistake, as in why did it happen, and then reflect and consolidate your thinking into around how to avoid it in the future.
Yeah.
Um, that kind of goes without saying that you should deal with it like that, but I think there's an important fourth point to add to this is that you are transparent and you communicate your mistakes along with your retrospective
Yeah.
findings of around how you deal with them moving forward. This is not just with your boss as a way of ensuring that the mistake doesn't reoccur, but it's also to ensure that you share your learnings in a wider collective with your teams, with your leadership peers, as a way of showing that you act with the trust that the others are giving you, but also that you are a
Yeah.
reflective, self-reflective leader, and that's a strong behavior to also promote it within your team cultures. So I think
Yeah.
there's all kind of positive halo effects of making mistakes, given they happen. It's more around how you deal with them. Fourth element, I think, or another element to the whole topic around making mistakes is that at the end of the day, mistakes is what fuels your experience, right? A
Mm.
happy path work where no mistakes happen, you don't really learn from those. It's on the off cases and
Yeah.
where decisions are made that turns out to be wrong. That's where you gain your experience.
There's a couple of sayings that I just had remembered when you were speaking. Is the one says, "I've got the scars," which tells you generally the person has made a launch, has made a bungled thing, and you've seen all the things that can go wrong, different in different dimensions. But there's also the other saying that says, if you want to fix a problem, you have to first recognize there is a problem. And it's the same, is that a lot of teams try to ignore problems, push them in front of themselves, push the can down the road. Why don't I start with an example on pushing the can down the road, where one particular instance of my career was that I fully disagreed with my boss. And I disagreed to the core point of what we were trying to build and launch, but I didn't want to face it head on because personalities, because, many reasons. But I didn't want to face it head on. So what happened is I ended up ignoring it. And I ended up thinking, I'll build stuff so that it works for me. I'll make sure it works for him as well. But of course it couldn't, because it was quite fundamental as a difference into how the software would do something for people. And so we pushed the can down the road until 6 months later, we had a big problem. And so I ignored the problem. I knew it was there. but I let it compound. And then it's much harder after 6 months because you first have a breach of trust. You have a lot of engineering work that went into this. You caused a lot of, disagreements. And going forward, it's harder for people to trust you. To your point about, showing that you're introspective, showing that you actually think about things and try the best, is that it also takes time to rebuild the structure and the trust and the whole relationship setting that you had before you let things drift, right? So that was my first biggie that I wanted to mention. What about you?
A biggie as well, certainly for me and the consequences of it, and it's people related, right? So I had one or two middle management roles within my function where I know the people occupying those roles were not,
Hmm.
like my intuition told me early on, these are not casted correctly.
Hmm.
For a number of reasons. And given there was a people decision with some consequences for individuals, I wanted to, despite my intuition being strongly advocating for moving them somewhere else or letting them go, I kind of kept looking for data points to validate my intuition. And that in turn kind of extended the decision delayed the decision for several months. And
Yeah.
along those months, basically, it had detrimental impact to the teams underneath these people. And we even had people churning and leaving the company as a consequence
Wow.
before I executed on the decision. And
Yeah.
I think it was a key moment in my career where I'm trying to stay true to my intuition. Obviously, it's a bigger decision around people always should be treated with the equal respect, but trying to force myself not to balance correctly that I'm not too trigger happy on my intuition, particularly around people, but
Yeah.
as well not to delay any decisions that are
Yeah.
unavoidable because the consequences are trickling into other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
the teams in particular around
And I
leadership
think,
roles.
but I think that's exactly the same advice is bring discussions forward. Do it as soon as you
Mm.
know there is something going wrong, right? The technical thing that happened to me where I worked on an ad targeting engine at some point, and we were very reliant on IDs of categories so that we would say somebody's interested in gardening, somebody's interested in cars. And I get a call on a Monday morning about, hey, something's going on. We have advertisers calling us. We have problems with the money and nothing's working. We're not making any money anymore. And what had happened in that case, for example, was that we built a machine learning engine. It was all running smoothly. All the lights were green, but the content team had changed some IDs. And so suddenly all the IDs didn't match anymore. So technically it worked, but our system was just saying, nobody matches this ID, nobody matches that ID. So the ads were just going, into standard box standard mode. So we basically unconsciously created a situation where we had a lot of frameworks around bugs and red lights if things went wrong, but it was early days of machine learning. We didn't have borders and frameworks for drift of data, and we had a massive drift. So we put in, you know, a huge amount of things. But now, every time I build a system that has numbers that relies on a lot of data, I put in safeguards, I put in frameworks, and it's very different how I approach things so that we don't run into something like this anymore. That was my second example, I think, more from a technical point of view.
I think that was a good case as well, and it goes to show it's not just people related the way you make mistakes, but also on the even on in the core task of your role, right? So it's something I'm keen to promote as well, given we are in leadership roles and we are that we're dealing with leadership challenges as well in this podcast is that I think the importance as well of around promoting and a culture within your teams that it's okay to
Yeah,
make mistakes as long as you're honest about them. I think it's something that starts with you and how you lead yourself. In effect, we touched
agreed.
upon this. I think in terms of how to do that, in the past, and an initiative I've done almost in every role I've had in the last 15 years is around. I call it the Frodo the Courageous Penguin Award, which is in effect an award. ceremony internally within teams to nominate and declare a winner of the biggest mistakes that have been made. So not biggest mistakes, actually, to correct myself, is actually the best learnings from mistakes. And in effect, it brings people to stand on a pedestal, tell the world about their mistakes, but more importantly, what they learn from it. And it kind of, with leadership standing on a pedestal as well and telling about their mistakes, that's is just a
Yeah,
strong driver of promoting that culture. It's a bit of a tip maybe to give to
I
our
like
listeners.
I like this. The same. Recognize as a mistake, figure out what categories need to be fixed, people, technical, and then communicate about the fixes and the way forward. And I think that's a really good strategy. Like everything else, have a plan.
We are all the net sum, not of our mistakes, but on the learnings we gain from them. So lean into them. It's an important driver
Yeah.
of both your career progression, evolving yourself as a leader. So embrace mistakes when they occur and deal with them constructively. I think
Thank
that's the
you.
wrap up
That's
conclusion
very
for
well
this.
said. Thank you. Hopefully that was useful to everyone. As usual, send us your ideas, subscribe, and we hope this will bring you interesting steps to solve things or to approach things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jonas.
for listening.